Hello everybody and welcome to another Hims video. This one, debunking the GLP FUD, debunking the GLP-1 FUD that we've been seeing trending on Twitter for the past 2 days now, on X, sorry, it's called X now, coming from Amazon launching Wegovy at $149 a month. So let's go ahead and let's talk about why I consider this to be FUD. Really quickly, when I try to only focus on the GLP section, we know Hims is a much bigger company, or at least I hope we do. A lot of people don't dig deeper and they think Hims is just about GLP-1. It's not the first time in the past they thought Hims was just about ED pills. But after that, they thought Hims was just a marketing stock and just about the marketing. At one point, there was people complaining about Hims talking about just about SSRI, making money in SSRI on anti-anxiety pill. We've seen that FUD before many times. The point that I want to make is this is from the latest letter, the Q3 letter. You can see, and that's their guidance for 2025. So we still have a little bit of forward-looking guidance here. They're expecting 725 million of weight loss revenue for 2025. Remember, they haven't reported Q4. And the total revenue for that year is expected to be reported coming in at 2.35. So that would be 30% of the business is weight loss. However, 2 quarters ago, we know Yemi said, he said on the call 2 quarters ago that more than 100 million of that amount of money of their revenue is coming from oral solution, i.e. metformin-based solution, right? A diabetes drug that people take for weight loss. Bupropion and metformin together. I'll get to that in a second. So, and that was 2 quarters ago. So we can only assume the share of oral medication went up, especially as a lot of people were taken off Ozempic when the partnership ended in Q1. You remember in Q1, partnership with Novo ended. Q2 was not that good. I mean, slightly down in the revenue. In Q3, we exceeded Q2 and we exceeded Q1 again, and we went back into growth. And my guess is that some of this has to do with the fact that people moved to oral solutions, but also the money we lost in Q2, we lost a lot of money because sometimes these subscriptions are bundled. You buy it 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, and so when there's a cancellation, it's a bigger hit for the revenue. The point is, in Q3, the growth is back in full steam. We not only grew from Q2 to Q3, but we grew from Q1 to Q3. So we're back full steam at growth. The point is, how much oral solution do they sell? We don't know. How many metformin-based oral pills, as they call them, how many of those do they sell? We don't really know. I'm assuming it's bigger. It could be 200 billion. It could be more. So the conclusion I'm going to make, and I don't have that exact number, but at best right now, I will say that Hims is 25% a GLP-1 story. It's 25% a GLP-1 story. And when you see how the stock moves on GLP-1 news, I mean, I'm being facetious here, but the stock essentially moves 150% on GLP-1. It's all about GLP-1. That's all the stock moves on. Yet, if you look at the revenue, it's objectively only 25% of the revenue. Yes, Hims still has a big business in ED. Yes, Hims still has a major business in antidepressive, anti-anxiety, SSRI type medication. Still has a major business in other areas like hair loss, right? Nobody ever talks about hair loss, but it's actually a pretty big business for Hims. They have quite a following for their shampoo, for example. They have an anti-hair loss shampoo, anti-dandruff shampoo. They are well established in that field. That's part of the revenue too, right? Hair loss. We forget about hair loss. We forget about, say, the revolution that was Rogaine back in the day, if you follow that field. Anyways, moving on, it's only 25%. Right now, it's only 25% of revenue. GLP-1, only 25%. So the stock should not move entirely on GLP-1. It's kind of ridiculous. But it's a stock market. What do you expect, right? Okay, let's talk specifically about the FUD of the day. First of all, GLP-1s are entirely legal. They're well accepted by the FDA. Hims documents really well why people need compounding medication. It's part of the entire thesis of Hims. The entire thesis of Hims is the personalization of medicine. It should be personalized, right? If you do a microdose, you also have to personalize it. You personalize the dose. You create a specific dose for a person's weight or for a person's condition. So they have a long history on personalization. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. That's well accepted. They are also helping greatly bring the cost down of GLP-1s as a whole. Second of all, generic liraglutide is here. People forget that there is a GLP-1 called liraglutide that is off patent as of 6 months ago. It's been off patent. Hims has manufactured its own version of a generic liraglutide and is selling it. It is selling it in the United States. It's a little more expensive, but it is still working. It's a little less effective, actually somewhat less effective. And you know, it's it's got drawbacks, but it's still here, and it's part of the thesis. They're prescribing some of that too. People always forget. So there's a generic GLP-1 we never talk about. Then the third point, oral. We talk a lot about oral weight loss pills right now, especially with the approval of a weight loss version of Wegovy with Novo, right? We talk a lot about that. Whether it's LifeMD, whether it's Hims, whether it's a lot of its competitors, they've all been selling a lot of metformin-based weight loss pills, right? Bupropion, metformin. They've been selling a lot of these pills. The idea that you can treat obesity with a medical treatment, with a prescription, is a new idea. It's a societal trend. People were not okay treating weight loss via a pill a few years back. GLP-1s made it acceptable to treat overweightedness, to treat being overweight with a pill. That made it acceptable. You go back 5 years ago, that was not the case. You go back 5 years ago, most people thought you got to treat weight loss by eating better or by exercising. Now we have a third solution, which is a pill, which is a very compelling value proposition for a lot of people who have busy lives and who have failed many times on dieting and all that sort of stuff. A pill to fix overweightedness is a big value prop. And they're selling a lot of these pills. In my guess is 200 million is what they're selling run rate yearly. So that's a lot. And then lastly, a lot of people, I'm at the hotel, sorry if I speak a little low. Lastly, a lot of people talk about how the issue is that there's problems with reputation. Well, if you're going to go with a compounder, wouldn't you want to go with the most famous one, with the one that has the most legitimate reputation, with the one that has the highest number of Google Store and Apple Store reviews? Hims has super high reviews on the App Store and on the Google Store. If you go look, I think it's like 4.7 and 4.6 respectively, on tens of thousands of reviews. So wouldn't you want to go with a more legitimate brand? Hims is a brand for the average TV watcher. Right? It's a brand that has been following them for well over 5 years. The average football watcher in the US, or the average, TV series watcher, Hims advertises all over the place, right? Even CNBC Hims advertises. Hims advertises on the radio. Hims is kind of part of American life at this point. It is, it is the Crisco of healthcare. At the point, back in the day, you had a bunch of old brands that have become brands today. They were launched through TV. Hims has been launched through TV advertising. Now, if you're outside of the US, you may not see that. But if you're in the US, you've seen a lot of these ads. They are pervasive. They are everywhere. And so that creates legitimacy that you may not have with some random website somewhere else selling a compounded GLP. So I argue that adds some legitimacy. Okay, so that's the second point. Yes, GLP-1s are doing well. They're doing well for Hims. They're cheap at Hims. They're not going away. And they're a legitimate player in that field. And they're a player that grows fast. They're a player that recovered from the end of a Novo partnership and grew from Q1 to Q3, which is a big deal, which I didn't expect. No people who analyzed this stock a long time expected that. So anyways, it's amazing. Point number 3, and this is the most important point, and that's part of the FUD of the days. People are saying, oh, Amazon is coming for Hims. Amazon is coming for Hims business. It's not Hims House saying that, by the way, but a lot of people, Hims House is great for summarizing anything about Hims, but a lot of people are talking about this and saying, oh, Amazon is going to kill Hims. Not the first time we hear this FUD, by the way, about Amazon. And even back in the day, if you remember Teladoc, when I used to cover Teladoc back in the day, I never liked Teladoc, but they were saying Amazon was going to disrupt Teladoc. Maybe there was more truth to Teladoc. Point is, Amazon has been feared to disrupt everything. Whole Foods. Do you remember Whole Foods was supposed to disrupt grocery stores? Do you remember 2018? Do you remember Kroger stock in 2018? Because I remember Kroger stock in 2018. Everybody thought Whole Foods was going to disrupt the grocery stores in the US. The Fire Phone. This is an older reference. But do you remember the Fire Phone? The Fire Phone was going to disrupt the iPhone. It was Amazon, right? It was not Microsoft. That was not Microsoft Lumia. That was the actual Fire Phone. It was going to disrupt the iPhone. That never happened. And now we say Amazon Pharmacy will disrupt Hims, when more globally, disrupt all sorts of pharmacies. And I tell you one thing, I do not think that's going to happen. There's a few reasons. One of them, $149 versus $199. Sure, you're cheaper. Amazon is cheaper right now. But Hims is a very dynamic company. When you're a company, you're driving into a wall, there's a problem, you slow down, you do a turnaround, you have action. Companies are economic actors that take action. There's competition, they see the pricing that the competitors practice, they can move, and they've moved the price many times at Hims. It's not the first time that they change their price. They've changed their price many times. You can bet they monitor the competition. They won't sit still if they see business going away. But this is not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that at $149, you do not include the doctor visit. The doctor visit is not included. That's a major problem. You need a prescription. A lot of people who want weight loss pills do not see a doctor regularly. A lot of people, this is what people forget. A lot of people don't really know how about going to the doctor. A lot of people don't have access to health insurance. I think something like 40 million or something, maybe more now with the end of the subsidies with ACA or whatever. A lot of people just have no idea, especially Hims. Hims is targeted towards men. A lot of men in their 30s don't go to the doctor every year. It's not that easy to get a prescription if you don't have friends and family that are doctors, or if you're not, part of like a, very, very health-oriented family. It's not that easy to get a prescription. It's not that easy to get a prescription. And people say, oh, you can just get a separate subscription for Amazon for $25 a month. You can call in a doctor. It's not that easy. People want to click. They want to click a button and receive the drug a few days later. Amazon should know that more than anybody, and they don't. Which is why at Amazon you can buy prescription medications for cheap, but you need a doctor to send in the prescription at Amazon, which is a whole other can of worms, by the way. And that's a problem with Amazon, and that's a problem with cost plus drugs, and that's a problem with all of these companies who try to offer drugs cheap. They offer drugs cheap without the doctor. When you offer drugs cheap without the doctor, that is the problem. And there's other details that are very important. Doctor visit. First of all, I mean, you could if you have a good doctor, but if you go for your physical, the odds are the doctor is not going to be able to address all of your issues, and the odds are the doctor at your physical is not going to prescribe you a GLP-1. They're going to want to see you again, or they're going to refer you to somebody, right? They're going to try. Maybe they're going to look for you at diabetes. There's all sorts of forms of standards of care that doctors follow. They may not prescribe you a GLP-1. That's my point. Or they may refer you, more likely. They may tell you, I'm going to refer you to someone else. I'm going to refer you to my colleague. I'm going to refer you to a diabetes specialist. I'm going to not prescribe you the GLP-1, because there's issues. I read a study somewhere, and so I'm not going to prescribe it to you. I recommend you lose weight via exercise. There's a lot of old school doctors. So here's the problem. If you don't get prescribed, who pays for the cost of the visit? You pay for the cost of the visit. If you don't get a prescription, you pay for the cost of the visit. This is not a problem with Hims. If you go through Hims, and Hims doctors, right? Hims has, I think, a little more than 2,000 doctors now, and NPs, mostly NPs, but practitioners, let's call them practitioners. If you don't get a prescription, you don't pay. That's magical. That's a big change in the business model of healthcare. If you don't get a prescription, you do not pay. So Hims is essentially sponsoring, bundling into that cost, that monthly cost. It's bundling the medical service. It's bundling the assessment, the initial assessment, and it's bundling the follow-ups. And that's a really big deal. And it's nonetheless a big deal because doctor visits, of course, are typically hundreds of dollars. I always say in my local clinics, between something like $178 and $476, depending on what you're going in. But it's going to cost you at the very least $200. And you don't know how much it's going to cost you until the visit is over, because it depends how they code the visit in the system. That's another aspect. But here's the worst thing. The doctor may say, I'm going to prescribe you a GLP-1 for 30 days, for 60 days, and then I want to see you again. That's the follow-up, right? And they all do that. You bet they all do that. And for good reason. I'm not criticizing, right? Repeat income is important. I'm sure there's also a medical reason as to why they do that. But at Hims, your follow-ups are included. It's all bundled in the price. You got your follow-ups, you got your chat box, you can talk to your doctor. It's all included in one price. So when we talk about Hims, it's important to realize that it's a whole rethinking of healthcare. If you don't qualify for care that you're looking for, you don't have to pay. The knowledge of a doctor you do not have to pay for anymore, because it's bundled into your prescription. And we saw what happened with the state of Wyoming. I think it was Wyoming the other day, allowing AI prescribers, AI doctors. This is going to happen to the whole USA. At some point in a few years, AI will prescribe. That's my firm take on this. And when AI prescribes, what happens to the cost of a doctor? It's obviously included within the cost of a medication. So the whole ping-pong risk, from primary doctor to specialist to follow-up, free doctor visit, at least $700. You don't have that problem if you go with a company like Hims. You have that problem if you go with Cost Plus Drugs, if you go with Amazon, if you go with Lilly Direct. All of these websites, you have that problem. Hims and LifeMD and a few copycats like Ro are the only websites where you don't have that problem, because the doctor visit is included within the monthly cost of the GLP-1. And that's called a business model innovation. That's a 0-to-1 move. That's why I love Hims very much. And by the way, this is true of everything Hims prescribes, not just GLP-1s. But that's the third of the day. The third of the day is about GLP-1. If they are successful about testosterone, which some research suggests that they are doing pretty well with the low T treatment and all that sort of stuff, except perhaps in 2026 or 27, the new FUD will be about low T and how we're prescribing testosterone to people who shouldn't need it and should do, I don't know. There's going to be FUD for this company. It's such a volatile company. You're going to have FUD for a long time for this company. But anyways, hopefully that assuaged some of your fears. This was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.